Finally getting another Sunday night finance stream. It's been a busy, busy week. Had a bunch going on in life, had a bunch going on in trading. I'm going to be talking to my friend SalomFishbee here in a little bit about Splinterlands. He's got some updated stuff going on with that. Right now, we're looking at the futures, and they are pretty much flat. We opened up somewhere around here, and that's about where we're sitting. We had that little pump on Friday, which is probably a bit of a squeeze considering the week was mostly down after we got to the Fed. And the whole thing with the meeting was like, we didn't get anything super bearish. I mean, we pretty much heard what we expected to hear. We're waiting for the next meeting, though, because the next meeting is going to have the summary of economic projections. I mean, those are the more important meetings for sure. They usually don't like to paint themselves into a corner right before those meetings. So even though this was important because we're saying like, hey, are they going to pause or are they not going to pause? The summary of economic projections is going to tell people farther out in the future what's going down. And that's what we're waiting for. We're waiting for what's up next year. So it's like, when are we going to cut rates? I don't know. People keep thinking like the market is just so stubborn that we're going to cut rates this year. I don't think we're going to do it unless there's a problem, right? If there's a problem, they'll cut rates for sure. That's how it goes. But if there's not a problem, they're not going to cut rates. And you think, okay, is this whole like banking thing, is this a problem? Yeah, it's a problem, but like how big of a problem is it? It's mostly localized to the tech sector and a few surrounding sectors. There is some spillover in some other places, but a lot of this was because people went crazy in 2020 and 2021, and now the chickens are coming home to roost. That's just the way it goes with this kind of stuff. And the areas that fly the highest are going to fall the hardest. Now, some of the stocks that are in that sector, like Amazon and Tesla and Facebook and all them, yeah, they fell, but they also kind of benefited because they're soaking up all the people that were getting out of these other stocks. There's some of the few stocks that are lifting the averages because the averages are moving with not that many stocks. Like if the S&P 500, more and more of them are starting to come out of the woodworks, but for the most part, it's the big names like Apple and all that are moving, like Microsoft and those sort of stocks that are moving the entire averages, which is making the market look like it's higher than it is. But that's also making the bears go, oh, well, look at this. It's artificial. Everything else is dying. Well, money's moving around because things are uncertain right now. That's what happens when things are uncertain. Money moves to stocks that are more certain. Money's going to come out of these high flyers, the speculative stuff that was going crazy before, and move into the ones that they know is going to be around. Like Meta is going to be around, right? I mean, it might have some problems. It's got its things, but it's going to be around. It's not like some random startup that went to 1 million and then dropped. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We're waiting to see what happens with the next meeting. This one was crazy. We had a lot of sideways action, but high volatility for that sideways action. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. So I ended up not trading this one. So Wednesday, I mean, these are 30-minute candles, so it makes it look like it wasn't as crazy as it was. But we had like a lot of up, a lot of down, back up, and it was just going. And these long wicks tell you that there was huge movement in these areas. I was just sitting here watching it. I didn't trade it this time because I just didn't have a good feeling. And normally I like to go to the upside and catch a quick pump, and I could have gotten it on this, but I just didn't. I got in a little early, and it moved around a bunch, and I got out for break even, basically. I made $1, so I'm calling that break even, and because it is break even. But I didn't like the way it was moving, so I just didn't want to go for it. I had puts up. I was looking at puts. I almost got in some puts when it was struggling to get past these areas and coming down here. But I was looking at those puts, and they weren't up that much. I just thought this would be a good one to watch and not get in on the long side because I really haven't liked long options this year. It's just been too sideways to get into long options. There's always this crush of volatility right when you think things are going to go. So I didn't want to do that, and I'm glad I didn't. I could have made a little bit of money going to the short side. It looks like, oh, you could have made a bunch of money. Yeah, if I got in at the right point, but it was moving around so much that I didn't know what the right point was. It kept looking like maybe it was going to break out. You know, we had this top right here, and then, I mean, it came down, it came back up, and it was kind of struggling at this point. And after it hit like the second or third peak before coming down, I thought, this is it, man. I don't know how far it's going to drop, but I don't think it's going to go up anymore. So I just kind of gave up. That would have been the time to get in on the puts, because if you're getting in at this area right here, you're not going to see that much if you're trying to day trade it. I mean, I could have held it to the next day, but look, you'd have to get in right at the open, and then the rest of the day it was going up until it hit that midday stack where it's right where it was before. So I didn't really like these to the long side. You would have to time them perfectly, which I wasn't ready to do with this meeting. I just didn't have enough confidence that this was going to be the meeting that things were going to explode in either direction. And even though it went down, it still wasn't the kind of explosion I was looking for. So I mostly stayed out of it. So that was pretty much what I did this week. I was just watching how everybody reacted to it. Friday was a little interesting. The non-farms came in. It's looking like the Fed is going to have to pause at some point, but they're strained to the economy, but unemployment isn't dropping. That's the thing that's exciting people. It's like, all right, we're getting inflation's coming down and certain metrics are coming down, but unemployment is staying exactly the same. It's still 3.4%. It's been like that for so long now. So that's the thing that makes people think like, all right, maybe this isn't going to be as bad as we thought. And that's what the Fed wants to do. They want to bring prices down without crushing the labor market. They think unemployment has to go up a bit. They're expecting it to go into like the 4 or 5% range, which would still be good historically, but from a 3.4%, I mean, that's about the best you're going to get right there. It's once you get into like the low threes, it's really hard to get lower than that just because of how the economy works. So now what I want to see is what happens next week. I wasn't confident enough to trade any of this stuff. There were some big movements. You could have made it if you timed it perfectly, but look at these check mark patterns, right? They're going down and coming right back up about halfway, maybe a little less than halfway, and then they're moving around. It's got to do it again. This one went lower, but it's coming right back. I don't like this as far as long options. I like this as far as short options. Now, that's what I've been doing lately is getting into some short options and just sucking up premium, because that's the thing you do in a year that goes sideways like this, where it's top, but we're getting higher lows. I'm still liking premium sells right now. Just try to suck out that premium while I can. So I'm going to try to set up SalomFishbee here. We're going to come in and talk about Splinterlands because that's what I wanted to do. How's it going, SalomFishbee?
It's going good.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being with me. SalomFishbee is on Twitch/SalomFishbee. He does some Splinterland content. He does some other stuff. Tell everybody what you're doing mostly.
I've been playing around. I haven't been doing a whole bunch of content lately, but I do have some ideas for some movie watch parties, and I wanted to do a series with my girlfriend. She's had quite the experience in the healthcare industry. I feel like that'd be a really good one to document. But yeah, once in a while, I'll get on there and play some Splinterlands and listen to some old school sci-fi stories or old 1940s, 60s American government propaganda. It's good fun, had by all.
That's always fun. It's good to learn from that, too, because it kind of shows you the parallels of today. All right, let's get into it real quick. So we were going to talk about Splinterlands. I haven't really done a live stream about this. I did an interview with you a while ago, and wanted to kind of update on that because things have changed since then. So if you could just give us a quick rundown of what Splinterlands is, and then we can get into some of the new stuff that's going on.
It's a play-to-earn Web3 collectible card game, and you own all your assets. And the cards themselves are NFTs. And then the currencies that you trade in the game, well, at least a few of them are cryptocurrencies themselves that can be cashed out and traded on exchanges. So it's basically an answer to kind of the way a lot of gamers don't like the idea of not owning their assets. You know, they don't like the idea that if they get banned, they lose their, special gun or all their champion points or whatever.
Right.
So Splinterlands is basically using the blockchain technology. It's on the Hive blockchain to make it so that it's as DeFi as it can be at the moment. They have validator nodes and things in the line to make it so that the game basically could be run indefinitely by the players. Like if one day something happens to the company or whatever. But yeah, it's basically answered the question, should I be able to own my own stuff on the virtual world? And a lot of people think you should.
Well, that's where things are going right now. We're getting to a point where more and more is going to be done online. And your assets are going to be under the control of people that own the platforms. For example, Facebook, right? Meta. You think that they're going to let you do something like this? I mean, they'll probably have to integrate something as it becomes more popular, but like they want to be able to shut you down if you're a problem. Yeah. And that's like that's basically what humanity's been trying to do with society forever, is be able to shut down the people they don't like and amplify the people they do. So this is a way to prevent that from being unjustly used or corrupted and all that. At least it's an attempt to do that.
It's kind of a side tangent, but you brought up Facebook. If someone posts a picture of you that you don't like, you can't just ask them to take that down. You have to report it as violating one of their terms of service.
And then they have to deem that it actually is.
Right. And it's like, what if I just don't want this person posting pictures of me?
Right. But fair use and blah, blah, blah.
Right. I mean, this isn't a social media site, so it doesn't directly solve that. But I think having the blockchain technology be more readily available could solve a lot of those issues. And having companies like this succeed in the gaming world could lead to succeeding in the social media world.
Right. And that's kind of what we're doing, is this landscape is building itself right now. We basically had the legacy media, the TV landscape, the radio landscape. It figured out how it was going to do all that decades before we were born, right? They figured this stuff out by the time it was like the TVs were barely coming into people's homes, and they basically had it set, because not any old jackass could just get on and show their ass on TV or whatever. There were standards to prevent that, because some people were like, well, I don't want my kids seeing that or whatever. But then that goes in the other side of the thing too, of what if people had really good information, actually important information, but somebody in some place didn't want that information to go through. Well, they blocked you. And that's what the internet was supposed to solve. But as time has gone on, it's been shifting back to that old model where the quote elite control everything. And I mean, blockchain is a way to sort of battle against that. But I think there's so much more to it than just blockchain, and I think blockchain can be corrupted as well. You know, it's like, so what do we do? Do we have some people control everything, or do we have some AI control everything that could eventually not have our best interests at heart anyway? Like, it could be the same thing, but it would just be a different overlord. So that's the other side of the coin, which is a whole different tangent.
That's the thing with the game and the whole DeFi aspect of it. But it's like the whales have a lot of power in the ecosystem, right?
Yes.
And that's kind of what we see in crypto, and that relates to like the whole corporate monopoly thing that we see in like Web 2 and, you know, traditional media and stuff. So it's kind of like the same thing. You have these whales who have all this power, but when you look at it, it's still less than like what the current gatekeepers hold in the current/old system. You know what I mean?
Right, because they actually have to invest to wield their power around, whereas in the old legacy system, they could just go through separate channels and have everything done.
Right. Think about like how much Johnny Carson dictated the course of comedy. For as long as he was on. You couldn't be a famous comedian if you didn't do a tight 5 on Carson. Like, there was no other route to fame. I'm sure similar things were like that for musicians and everything else. And in crypto, it's like, well, there's not one Johnny Carson. There's fucking, pardon my language, but there's
you can swear.
There's many. I was going to ask you.
You know, whatever. If it happens, it happens. You know, it's artistic. You're putting it to enhance the sentence or whatever.
No, I'm doing it because I'm lazy.
There's that too. Anyway, so we were on track about something. I kind of derailed it.
I was still in my intro. It's a collectible card game right now. That is the only game, but within the next month, like, they want it to be a whole ecosystem, and they've got like 3 or 4 games coming out within the next month or two. A soccer game where they're partnered with one of the American Soccer League, a tower defense game, and then there's this other NFT basketball game project, Chibo Dinos, that they just partnered with. That's supposed to have like a little 6-bitty NBA Jam type of basketball game you can play with like NFTs.
So I think that's important because they're branching out from the type of game that they're in right now to something that's a little bit more like mainstream than like an RPG style card game versus basketball and soccer. Like, it's different. They're getting into different areas. And I think that's important with the whole direction that they're going, is because right now people don't like crypto that much, but getting all this stuff built up now is going to benefit them when things come back.
Yeah, and that's the thing. This project's been around since 2018, so they've been through bull and bear markets. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of salt in the game right now. You know what I mean? I think the last time we did a big interview on it, like the main token was at like 6 cents, and right now it's like 2.5. It hasn't really pumped with the crypto market, at least not like the base assets, but there's the whole land expansion, which is just so much more value and money into the game. And I want to talk about that, but let me finish on my intros here. Okay, so there's a town hall and an AMA every week where the community can directly ask the creators and the team members questions and get answers. And there's a DAO that controls a certain amount of the SBS, and that is connected to the community voting. So the community can burn a certain amount of the currency to initiate proposals, which are then voted on all the people who hold and stake SBS. And if you hold and stake SBS, you get an APR return plus like various other privileges in the game. So the incentive with the SBS, there's 2 ways you can look at it. As a player, it's often used as kind of like a paywall or an earnings wall to like unlock different leagues, but as an investor, it's almost like a dividend stock that unlocks other tiers. You know what I mean? So you put the SBS in and you get this APR, this dividend off it daily, right?
Oh, that's nice.
You can go on and collect it at any time. Yeah, and then what you collect, you can then use in the game or convert to other tokens for the game, you know, to buy like cards or rent cards or stuff like that.
Okay.
But then you start like that, right? And then so once you get up to like 200 SBS staked, then there's like these bronze tournaments you can play in. And for the most part, those are going to pay you out like 2 SBS every couple weeks that you get to play with them. So that's like 6 more SBS coming in every month. And then once you get to like 700, another tournament unlocks. Right? And then once you get to 1,000, you can start buying the SPS reward cards every quarter. right? And so for every 1,000 you have staked, you can buy one of those. And those typically cost one voucher, which a voucher is another reward you get for staking SPS. And those only sell for like 9 cents, but the reward card usually sells for like 50 cents, if not more.
And that's in this environment.
Right. And then that benefit unlocks. And then another tournament unlocks where the minimum payout is 20 SPS. And you can play in that 2 times a month. So there's another 40 SPS coming back to you.
Okay. And there's so many ways to earn, and this is what I like about that. And I'm sorry, did you mention that you could rent your cards as well in there?
Yes, yeah. You can rent your cards out. You can sell your cards, obviously. You can rent your cards out daily or for the entire season. There's the big push with the land that's coming out with the rental market. Because the land is basically going to be an empire building game within this ecosystem. And right now, people are opening their plots of land that sold for $20 2 years ago. That's how long it actually took them to get up and running. Some people were definitely salty about that.
Right.
But it's going, and like 1.5 is coming out like within the next month, where it's really going to burst it open. Well, and the land basically is going to add more utility to the whole ecosystem, obviously, because it's another game you could play. It's an empire building game where you actually own your empire. You know, you can go on right now and buy like a stream or a lake or a castle or a keep, and there's all different rarities and magical beauties. And then when 1.5 comes out, you're going to be able to stake your cards onto it, thus adding like more value to the cards. And then that land is going to produce either SPS or grain, I think is the one thing they're starting with to feed your peoples. And then there's going to be a future game aspect where you play spells. And then the stuff you craft from the land makes the spells.
Okay, so they're tying it all together. That's good.
Right, and then they're working on like boss fights and all this stuff for the future of land and how to expand it out.
Okay. I think it was like a couple of days after the land came out. You notified me and I went and took a look at it, and there were some properties for sale. I wasn't really sure what to do because there were some that were owned and there's some that weren't. You know, some of them were more expensive than others, and I was thinking, you know, I wouldn't mind just grabbing one of these to hold as an asset on the side. But I really didn't know what I was even looking for. So like when you do that, what are you trying to get as far as like, is there a better area to look for, or does it not matter? Like, what's your opinion on that?
Okay, so as far as like the area and the resources and all that, that's pretty much just up in the air right now. But as far as price, you can get like a common plot with no enhancements for like $48 right now, which is probably cheaper than when you looked. I think when you looked, like the cheapest ones are going for like 60, 58. Right?
I saw them at like 150 or something. That's why I was confused, because you're like, yeah, there's some that are like 60, and then I was looking and they were like 150, and I thought it just pumped real quick or something, but I think I was looking in the wrong spot.
That's another thing. The filter on it is actually really good once you get used to it, but you're not the first person I've talked to that's had issues with like, how do I just see what's for sale, and how do I, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was trying to do it quick too, so it wasn't like I didn't have my brain in it. I was like, I'm just gonna grab something real quick. This is not the mindset you should have when you're investing in stuff. But I just thought, all right, if it's like $60, I could just grab some land real quick. I'll just do that, and I'll figure out what I want to do later, just in case it pumped. But if it's down, then hey, maybe it is fortunate after all.
Yeah. Well, it depends on what plot you got, but I just picked up a rare desert the other day for like 70. I'd already gotten 2 plots, and like it wasn't my plan to get any more than that, but the rares right now are going like more affordable than I expected them to be. Because an unsurveyed plot goes for about 150, and I think it's going for that on Hive, and you only have a 15% chance to not get a comment.
So what do you mean by unsurveyed?
The whole map of the Pretoria, the world where all this stuff is going down. And they just have all these regions, and everyone's been claiming their regions, right?
Okay.
And so now we're at like the very last region, because that's where all the plots are left. So everyone's claiming their land and that region. So any of the people who haven't claimed their land plot, who still have it unsurveyed, are going to be in the last regions that's left. Anyone that claimed before now, in theory, had a chance to pick any of the regions they wanted, and there was a region for every splinter or color, if you will, in the game. You know, there was a light, dark, forest, dragon.
So are you saying they're just buying like a generic plot, and it could be anywhere within one of the specific places that they picked, but like there are tons of places in each one of those little islands or lands or whatever they are that you could get? Like the one I clicked on was like a fire or something. It was all red, you know, and then there were probably like 100, 200, 300 plots all over the place, and only 20 or 30 of them said that they had owners. So like you just buy something in that region, and you don't know which one of those you're going to get at this point, but if you had done it earlier, then you could have possibly picked, or you could just pick the rarity, not the spot.
You could have picked what region you would be in if you had had it all along, but now there's only one region left to claim it. It wasn't like you could go pick which one. It was like, the East Village is now live. If you want East Village, you can get it. When the East Village is done, we're moving on to Longshare Bottom. You know what I mean? And that's just how it went all the way around the map. There was a chance to pull a keep or a castle, or you can pull like epic or mythic rarity, or you can get one that's occupied by monsters. And like the keeps and castles are selling for like, I think the cheapest keep is like $3,000, because those are going to get a percentage of all the taxes for that region.
Oh, really?
The thing goes live. Yeah.
So how are the taxes going to work?
There's like a 5% tax or something on transactions, and half of that like goes to the game, half of that goes to the keep.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. So that's basically like the networks that are processing a transaction for Bitcoin or whatever cryptocurrency, like they're taking the cut of that. You have to pay for that transaction to go through, and the person that's doing that is the one receiving the payment. So it's like the same kind of thing there. It's like, so you can buy a keep, it's going to be a bunch up front, but you're going to continue to make money as people transact in there. That's interesting. I didn't know about that.
Right. Or you could buy an unsurveyed lot and hope you pull a keep, hope you're, Mr. Lucky. That's why unsurveyed plot is 150 and you can get a common for 48. And I'm saying the rares that are going for like, not much more than 48, like $60 to $70 right now. Those are way harder to pull. You know what I mean? You're only pulling a rare in like 10% of them. So once the game goes live, that little extra bonus that you're getting from the rare, it's probably going to pay itself. If you're paying like an extra $10 for a rare and you're getting an extra 5% output out of the entire time that you play this, the mythics and the legendaries and all the crazy stuff are out of my price range and probably always will. But the rares are starting to fall into a realm where I'm like, oh man, can I put another $70 on my card this month?
See, that's interesting. So you could basically pay the 150 for the random plot and end up with a common that you could have bought for 48.
And
you have a slight chance.
Most likely scenario.
Right. So that's you're most likely going to get that. So you could either buy the rare and guarantee a rare for just a little bit more, or you could gamble and maybe get a common. Now, if you got a ton of money, then I guess like you might as well gamble or whatever. But like if you're trying
if you got a ton of money, just buy the keep outright for like $3,000.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Because that's probably as many as you're going to have to buy on survey to get it anyway.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know about that whole keep function, because that's nice if you could just sit back and collect a percentage of the transactions over time. Even if it's not a big percentage, like just having some kind of passive income from something you don't have to do is wonderful.
Yeah, and even with the SPS token not performing as well as we would like, if you compare that to one of those weekly or like SoFi or Credit Suisse, like dividend stocks. Is that what it's called, or did I mess it up?
Credit Suisse.
Suisse, whatever it is. But like if you compare the daily and weekly returns to those stocks, it's way better. Those stocks pay you out like 5 cents or something a stock every week, but the stock value declines over time.
Oh yeah. Especially in something that's risky right now, you're going to be losing more in the share price decline than you would be getting from the yield anyway.
Right. And like the problem with SPS is that it's like the main governance token, so it's like the thing that gets picked on. So every time they add value in the system that's like supposed to prop up SPS, it kind of takes it away, because the value they're adding to the system is to the people already in the system. And what do the people in the system have to spend? They have SPS to spend. You know what I mean?
So they're dumping their SPS to fund everything. That's exactly what's going on with the stock market right now. People are dumping all these bank stocks in order to get something else. Well, it's different because they're afraid of the bank stocks, but like that's how things work. It's like, okay, IPOs, perfect example. When a new company comes out and it's a good company, other companies are going to get sold off for people to buy in. Like when Snowflake came out and it was at $400 a share or whatever, so many tech stocks got hit so that people could buy Snowflake, only to have it now drop as low as it did. But that's what happens. It's like the more stuff you put out there, the more they're going to have to dilute the previous currency. So that kind of makes sense that they're doing that. Actually, that was what I was going to ask you. Is like, why do you think SPS is declining? And you're saying you think it's because people are dumping SPS so that they can get the new value from everything else.
I mean, that's part of it. There's a lot of reasons.
Okay, what else then?
Okay, so the other currency, DEC, Dark Energy Crystal, that's the main currency. And they want that to be a stable coin. They want that to be pegged at $1 for 1,000 of them. And so they've been doing, and it was down to like, I think almost like half of that at one point during the barest of the bear times.
Wow.
And they've been doing a bunch of stuff, and it almost got back up to peg, but it's been sitting around like 80%, which to where it was and the markets that we're dealing with is not bad for a gaming project. But they've been trying to put all this value into DEC. So SPS doesn't have as much utility. Like, you can't use it in the marketplace. When you win it, it comes in staked, so you can't even do anything with what you win and for like a week.
That's not too long.
And then, no, I mean, it's useful. And once you get going, it's like you can set up a cycle where you're getting it, and it's not that big of a deal. But it's a barrier when you start.
Right.
There are like other projects like the soccer game. The soccer game is giving out its token to people who have staked SPS, and the only token you can transfer it into is like SPS. You know what I mean? So people are just selling their soccer token games. I actually like the game, believe it. I've been staking it and buying the packs and stuff because it actually reminds me of Blitzball from what I've seen.
Blitzball from Final Fantasy X.
Yeah, it's like one of my all-time favorite, probably my favorite side game from any video game.
Yeah, that was fun.
Uncharted Waters Poker Table might come second.
I don't know that one.
So yeah, that's before your time. It's
okay,
before your time, so don't feel bad. But yeah, and then there was another big thing with SPS where they sold a bunch to people in the beginning who got this airdrop, and I think their price point was 2 cents, and when it got down to like 4, they started selling off. I'm not sure if those guys are still getting airdrops or still selling off or not, if that has anything to do with the token value, and that was a story that like I had to do quite a bit of research to get anything on. But,
wow.
Yeah.
Like it was hard to find because people were trying not to talk about it, or like, what do you mean?
Yeah. Splinterlands isn't a huge community. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like the creators are transparent, but they're still CEOs of a company. You know
right.
what I mean? They don't want to sit and talk about the bad shit all day.
Of course.
You know what I mean? If they talked about it, they're like, yeah, I talked about it. You know, so go back to when I talked about it.
Yeah, that's how they do it. They know you're not going to go back and research it. Those are actually all good reasons to why SPS would be down. I mean, not to mention, even though we've come up a bit in the crypto market, we're still technically in what I would call a bear market because we're down from where we were and we're hovering. Like we went into the teens and then we came up into the 20s and we've kind of like pushed up against this 30K mark for Bitcoin for quite a while now. I mean, ETH is in the 1800s. So we need a catalyst to move the market. And even though the project is holding itself together, I could still see why it would be down because people aren't getting the massive movements. Like that's the one thing that happens too, is like as something sits there for a long period of time, people get antsy. They're looking at their gains thinking like, all right, I could have made all this money if it was going. I'm either down or I'm not making anything, and this could drop. Because when you've been down this far, the first thought in your mind every time it goes up and sits there for a while is this could drop, which is why the markets keep peaking. Well, it's one of the reasons why markets keep peaking at these levels is because it hits there, it doesn't move, people get scared, they dump out, which then causes a cascade. So there's that, and then you're saying the people that were getting SPS at an airdrop to them originally and had a price point of like 2 cents were getting close to theirs, so they were trying to jump out. That actually makes a lot of sense. It's like a stock lockup period when there's a new IPO and there's a bunch of investors that are in it. They have to sit in it for 6 months or whatever the period is. It's usually about 6 months where they can't sell. But once that sell date happens, you'll see a stock just tank one day because a bunch of people are getting out, unless they believe in it and they don't dump. But a lot of the new IPOs, especially in a market that's starting to go down, those will get trashed and something like that. So that makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so we talked about that a little bit. We talked about the lands. You said the soccer game's coming up. There was one other thing. What was the other thing?
They have a tower defense game.
Okay, and is that going to be integrated with the lands also?
I don't know if there's any crossover with lands, but they're saying that you're supposed to be able to like stake your cards on the towers to get like upgrades.
Okay.
So it's like if you have an archery unit, you can stake it on an archery tower and get like +1 to archery, you know? That game, I have high hopes for it. It's going to be on the Splinterland page itself, or maybe it's just going to direct you to it from it. But it looks fun. I'm not a big tower defense guy, and frankly, I haven't played a tower defense game that's better than Rampart, but I'm definitely going to check it out. And then the other project they're doing is with this NFT thing called Shiba Dinos. And that's a project that they have like an NFT collection they're selling, and they have like a little NBA pick'em you can do and earn like crypto. But the big thing with them is they have like this little basketball game that's coming out, kind of like a little 16-bit double dribble meets NBA Jam kind of thing. Their NFT collections, they're all like little dinos, and you can play them in the game. And the game actually looks fun. I don't know, like fun like you sit out and grind it all day for coins, but fun like we play on stream, mess around. You know what I mean?
Okay, well that's good. So is that actually in league with the NBA, or is it just a basketball game?
I think it's just a basketball game at this point. They have an NBA pick'em on there where if you pick like the winner in the NBA game, you get some of their cryptocurrency. All the dinos and all the teams are like their own little creations.
So that's interesting. That's quite a few projects. And the Lands one's coming out first. Is there any idea of when the other ones might be out, or ballpark?
From what I have heard, all of those are like next month. Soul Keep, the tower defense, has been like in closed beta for at least a month. Probably more like 2 or 3. I think they wanted that one live before, and there's something holding it back. The soccer game, you can buy the packs and open the packs, and there's a franchise license. I haven't heard about when the beta for the game goes live, but I think it's supposed to be like in the next month or 2.
Okay.
And then Chiba Dinos is its own project. You can go on their website right now and play, I think, the Click'em game. And their partnership is with I think actually GLX, the soccer game.
Okay.
That's like its own site. They want that to be like their whole sports universe.
Being involved with a league like that could really help them for sure. Because I mean, they're going to get people that have no idea that Splinterlands or the community is even a thing, seeing advertisements for it. I mean, like anybody that watches that version of soccer is going to, probably see something about it somewhere, which is great.
And there's people like me who like, I don't really care about sports anymore, but if I start playing this play to earn game and,
then you will.
Raul Ibanez is making me $3 a day from all the goals he makes. You know what I mean? I might go on and buy me a Raul jersey. You know what I mean? Like,
dude, it's soccer. There's not going to be very many goals at all. It's going to be like one every couple of months or something, That's how it goes.
Right.
That'll be interesting to see how that works, considering soccer is a very low scoring game most of the time. Not always, but most of the time.
But a lot of times, I don't know how they're going to do it, but a lot of times in video games, they just let you score more goals. You know what I mean? Like, you'll play FIFA and it'll be like 15-8.
Right.
Like, if this was a real soccer game, everyone would be talking about it for like a year.
Right. All the times I've watched soccer, which is not many, I'll admit that, I've been like, all right, I'm going to give this a chance. And like most of the games end 0-0. And I'm going, why do people watch this?
Soccer, it's like playing it is fine, man. But watching it, no. Just no. Like baseball too, I guess. I guess I like watching baseball because I just grew up with baseball,
Yeah. Well, and I guess I can see the whole thing with soccer. It's exciting when a goal does happen because it's rare. That's kind of my bitch about basketball. I don't mind basketball, but I don't really enjoy it that much because it's just like constant scoring. So the only baskets that really matter are the ones in the end when a game is close. When you see it like, oh, it's 74-72 and now it's 76-70 whatever. It doesn't really do anything for me, but like that's why one thing I like about football and baseball is like a good game where it's a good low scoring game, it's actually entertaining. When they do score, it's great. So I could see like in soccer waiting the whole game and then finally having your team win on like a last second goal. That's got to feel amazing. So.
I like football, baseball, and basketball. I just can't stand the MLB, the NFL, or the NBA.
Yeah, the whole business aspect of it like really just ruins it. Anyway, we're getting off topic on all that. So
right.
Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about?
I wanted to actually talk about the bot thing going on in Splinterlands right now. Like, that's the big deal. Okay, so I talked earlier about the DeFi aspect, right? So a big thing with the creators and a lot of people in the game is that they have had a neutral to slightly positive opinion on people running bots in the game. So there's been a lot of bot farms in the game.
Right.
And they've been doing measures to like kind of limit the bots. They've said this for years, is that they don't have a problem with bots. They just don't think bots should have an advantage over human players.
I agree.
Right? And the bots do at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's really hard to not do that as something that can react faster and with a bigger database, than a human can.
I had a conversation with another player the other day, and we were talking about it, and we're like, are these new programs really that much better than a human player that pays attention and sits down and tries to be good at the game? And I was like, I think it's about 50-50, but then when you factor in the fact that like bots don't get tired, bots' girlfriends don't yell at them, you know what I mean? Bots don't fucking trip over their power cord, you know what I mean?
Right.
Bots don't get a phone call and not enter in a game, they just put in their 25 matches in like 15 minutes and play and it's done. I'd say that gives them the advantage by far.
Right. So it's like any given game, a human is probably better, but over the spread of games, the bot has the advantage because of consistency. Like its strategy doesn't change, whereas a human can get rattled, like in poker, and start tilting. Where a bot is just going to keep doing what, even if it loses 100 games in a row, it's still going to do the same shit.
If a bot misses the same guy 4 times in a row when there was only a 5% chance to miss, it doesn't like rage quit. You know what I mean? It doesn't go yell at its dog. Like, it just enters the next team.
Exactly. So I think your 50-50 assessment is right, and that's with bots in other things as well, not just Splinterlands.
Right.
So they're working on it, is what you're saying.
Oh, a quick thing back to what we were saying. The 2 closest competitors to Splinterlands right now in the Web3 gaming world are IMX and Gala Games. IMX has like a 36x times evaluation, and Gala Games has a 16x time evaluation. And I believe Gala has like more games up and running, but other than Spider Tanks, I don't think any of them are like you're actively earning crypto on. And IMX is it's like a Hearthstone kind of parody game, but it was caught up in the whole FTX thing.
Oh,
that's the Gods Unchained that I was playing for a minute. And
that was them. Oh, I kept seeing advertisements for that. I never played it, but I got paid on what's it called, Brave, to watch the advertisement for it over and over.
Yeah, I've played it a bit. I actually have an account on there that has like $200 worth of ETH that I'm having trouble getting back into.
This the same story across the way. The people are fighting to get their money out of all these things that were involved or sidechain involved with FTX.
Right, and then here you have this game like Splinterlands, the Web3 games that had nothing to do with it directly. It has been a functioning project for 5 years now. It is paying out currency every day. You know what I mean? It's on the high blockchain. So people forget about it.
Yeah. See that's interesting that you mentioned that. Like those ones that you were talking about that you don't earn as much money. It's going to be important as time goes on with the increase in AI and the fact that AI is going to be taking people's jobs across the board. And it's not even just the menial jobs. It's like creative jobs, right? Artists, musicians, writers, like all these people have their jobs threatened. And these were the jobs that people left the other ones to do. Now that we've gotten out of the regular economy, we've moved into this new online social media economy where you can make money in it, like people have wanted to do for generations. If those jobs are also being taken away by AI, where are people going to go make money? I think one of the things is going to be games. And yes, you're going to be competing with AI and bots and games as well. But if people need to make money, if we're going to continue the economy like this, which I think at some time we're going to have to adjust it, but if we're going to continue the economy like this, we're going to need a way for people to make money. And if AI is doing things cheaper and at least adequate enough to put people out of jobs, where are they going to get money? I think stuff like this.
Yeah, that's a big reason why there needs to be a human-only area in Splinterlands. Now, I definitely don't want like bots to not be able to play in the game, and that gets into the proposal that went through. So I talked about earlier how a community can put up a proposal, right? And the community has been trying to put together like an anti-bot proposal that will pass for a long time, and we keep getting like the DeFi argument from the creators and stuff. Well, one guy actually burned the 100,000 DEC, which is like peg value $100, real world value like 80, and put forward an anti-bot proposal. And it was very much different than what's going through. But one of the co-creators of the game, Yaba Matt, actually reached out to him, partly because the proposal got like more support than any proposal ever in the pre-voting. And but one of the creators reached out to him and was like, listen, the way he's like, I don't know if we can do it. He wanted them to make a league just for humans. And the way that they decided to do it was that they would make the current Wild League just for bots and make the current Modern League just for humans. And that proposal just passed.
So doesn't Wild League include all the old iterations of the cards and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wild League is all the cards and Modern is the most recent 2 or 4 sets, however you want to look at it. And so that passed. There was some hoopla about it, but it passed.
Well, that's
And,
important.
Yeah, it's very important. And there have been other things along the way to lessen bots. Like, I think Splinterlands has gone from 300,000 active players in like the peak of the bull run to like 50,000 now. And a lot of that is bots have consolidated because of all the measures they've done, like with the soulbound rewards and the other things to
Right.
fight bots in the system.
And soulbound
also-
rewards was the thing where like you get your cards and you can play them, but you can't sell them.
Yeah, it's like the cards you win for rewards. So basically, the cards you win for free are soulbound to until some point in the future. And
Okay.
then it may take assets to unlock them or sell them. They haven't defined what it's going to take to unlock them, but they've said that it's going to be like a year to two, and I think we're only 3 or 4 months into it, so they've got a good 6 months before they have to talk about that.
Because the whole point of the bots is that the bots are trying to grind through and make money for somebody that's running the bots. And if you're taking
Right.
away their ability to do that in some way, like it doesn't take all of it away, but people aren't going to want to spend the time putting bots in there if they can't reap the spoils, you know?
Yeah, the problem with the bots was it's a $10 spell book to basically unlock the earnings, and then you have to either rent or buy cards. They give you starter cards, but you can't really win. You can't earn anything with those. And it didn't used to be like that. It used to be that you could just throw them your $10 and you could start making the cryptocurrency. So there's been all these things that have been implemented to like lessen bots because there's just so many people that were like, I'm just going to pay the $10 and then cash out every asset I ever get from this. I'm going to run a bot that plays for me, you know, so I don't have to like donate the time at all. I just have to turn on my computer once a day, you know.
Right, because you could definitely make
Hell, I
more
don't
than
know if they do.
$10.
Yeah, and that's what people were doing is they were just draining as much as they could out of the system, you know, and it was getting to the point where it was like, yeah, we have the most active users, but how many of them are robots and how many of them are just draining money out of the system every day?
Well, so that brings up a key point, though. The thing about bots is when you're saying they were talking to the owners, I was thinking about other games in which bots actually increase the numbers of the game. So when they're touting their game to other people, they could be like, yeah, we have, like you said, all these active players. But you're right. How many of them are bots? They're lowering the experience for the actual human players. So that makes sense that they're trying to fight this. So what do we do about it?
Absolutely. And here's the thing about Splinterlands. The bots are a problem, and there's more to talk about it on it. But it's not like some of these other games, like these premium games, or I even suspect games like Hearthstone and Magic Arena, where you have like these god bots, where you have these people that were just given infinite resources and able to make whatever they want to set a higher standard. There's whales and there's card pros, and sure, you know what I mean? But there's also, I think, accounts that were just created by the users to be kind of like gatekeepers of certain places. You know what I mean? Because when you get into certain levels on those games, you do start actually getting, or expected to get, invited to like pro tournaments and stuff.
So are you saying there are people that own these accounts that are specifically holding good assets or resources in those accounts to prevent other people from getting up into those primary like tournaments and stuff?
No, I'm saying in like the more corporate games and like the freemium games, the actual game either gives or makes the account gatekeep those top levels. They want the people that are spending money to keep spending money and not just to be able to spend all the way up into the top level. And they want to make it so that they don't have to add more invites to like their pro tours and shit like that. You know what I mean?
Right. It's like the bouncers at the bar that only let in the people that look like they're going to spend a bunch of money. And so,
Right,
because that's what they want. They want you to buy a bunch of drinks.
I can't prove that goes on, but I do get that feeling. And maybe all these people, these accounts I think are doing this are just whales or pros and people who've spent more hours and money on the game than I have, so maybe their account should be there. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, it's probably a mix of both. Because, like, think about the people that have their livelihood tied into this game, but also have some kind of clout. Like, for example, streamers. Right? What about a streamer that's really good at one of these games or is really popular because of whatever game? They have an incentive to stay at that level. And if they can collude or do whatever they can to keep that going, then why wouldn't they? It's self-preservation. So, like, I think it's a possibility. I'm not like you. I'm not saying it's definitely going on, but I think it would be naive to not consider that as somewhat likely.
Right. And one, this is the big difference. It's like we're like, hey, it might be going on, it might be not. But say we could prove that it was, what would they do about it?
Some of those games might be doing it themselves. It might not even be cohorts or the game or whatever. It might be the people that own the game trying to just keep it up at a high level by doing stuff like that. You know, I think there are a lot of games that are shaped like that, because now games aren't just about buying to play. It's about continuing a subscription over time, making microtransactions and increasing those microtransactions. So they need to keep their livelihood going. They need to keep you paying. Yeah. And the best way to do that is to ensure the environment keeps you doing that.
Right. But that's the thing in like the Web 2 and the old world, it's like, at the bottom line, the company can do whatever they want. So they're not violating their terms and service by doing that.
Right. It's their game.
But if you caught Splinterlands doing that, it would be, if I don't know if it would directly violate terms and service, but it would certainly go against like the DeFi principles that they've been toting this whole time, it would be a big deal. It would be a scandal in their own eyes. You know what I mean?
Right. Most of the people that play this game are there because of that. This kind of thing's gained in popularity because people saw the whole DeFi aspect of it, and they saw the pay to play and where that was going and how bad it's been getting. So an alternative to that is necessary.
Yeah, and where the bot issue comes down to is you can't have like the drain on the system, even though it's like strictly DeFi. You know what I mean? You can't just let someone come in here and spend $100 10 times and then make $3 a month for infinity. That just doesn't work. It's just not a good business model.
Right.
Where did I leave off on the bot thing? I got to the founder said, let's split it into two things, right? And it passed. So Monday is the next town hall. So Monday, I'll know when that's implemented. And so at some point in the future, Modern is going to have a third-party site or whatever monitoring the bots. They're going to be kicking the bots out of Modern. So Modern is going to be people only at some point, and I'll have a better idea of when after Monday.
Right. For now, until the bots find ways around it, of course.
Sure. Here's the thing. From what I've listened to a lot, and they're using this third-party person, and I'll give it the chance and whatever. But from my understanding, they have a thing that they can just turn off where third-party sites can't put in the team. So if you turn that off, there's no bots. I mean, like you said, they'll find a way around it. But all the bots I know currently, the information comes in and goes out on a third-party site. So they could do a hard ban for bots. But like you said, they would adapt. They'd find a way to get around the third-party site. And there's helper programs, not unlike the old poker ones where like you put in the rule set and your collection and like some AI program tells you the best team to put out. I hate that shit. But there's really no way to stop it because it's just someone opening up a different screen on their computer.
Yeah.
But that at least they have to put the team in. The low bronze and silver levels had just people that had like literally thousands of accounts that were making, 12 cents a quarter every couple weeks.
That's terrible.
And you can imagine how they made it profitable. You know what I mean? It was work server, whatever.
It's like high frequency trading. That's what they do. They're getting in on transactions for fractions of a penny, but they're doing it so often that it becomes profitable. Okay, so they split the proposal into two, and they're looking at banning those.
The proposal passed Friday, so I imagine it's going to be a topic of the town hall tomorrow, and I'll know when moving forward to expect this. The bots have been so prolific that the community, like, we're going to start playing human versus human, and like people are going to recognize everyone's names from chat boards. And, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's going to be like people are going to be like streaming, and the other guy's going to be streaming. I think it's going to be fun. It might not work how it's supposed to work, but I think it'll be a fun experiment. It's really cool that the community like can affect the change in the game like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that it all started because one guy, instead of like buying 50 packs, he's like, I think this will make the game better if I can get this through, and put it through, and was actually contacted by one of the founders of the company, and the community responded and passed it.
See, that's something that isn't going to happen at Blizzard. I mean, Blizzard, they'll take, if enough people get mad about something, then they'll make a change, but it's not like somebody's just going to put up a proposal on their forums or whatever, and then the head of Blizzard's going to be like, oh, okay, no. So that's what I like about these kind of projects, is the fact that, yes, they're smaller, but they allow people to have input into a game that they actually enjoy and are part of the ecosystem. And like, yeah, you're right, not just input, but actually be able to change things with their play, with their money, all that stuff.
and own like the assets in the game. Think about those Empire games where people are just playing for packages to just play the game another day, where on this they're paying to own the asset. I think that's a big thing for this game that might not be next month. But I think if this empire building part of it takes off, think about all the money that's dumped into that. And think about if you're one of those people like, you know, you love Clash of Clans and you pay $25 a month for it because you just like that.
Right.
But then someone's like, hey, this game that is similar to Clash of Clans, you'll get your $25 back at the end of the month or the end of the whatever. You know what I mean? Or you'll put in so much, you'll be earning like $25 a day off your kingdom eventually.
Right. Because there are people that are going to play it to invest as well, people that don't care about the game, and then there are going to be people that play the game because they like the game. So I think as the crypto universe kind of expands again during the next bull market, whenever that ends up happening, stuff like this that's stayed through the difficult times is going to be much more relevant. Yeah, gaming and investment, Grigio. Exactly. See, that's what I like because everything's been about pay to play up until now. You know, when we were all kids, it was like you buy a game and then you play it and that was it. And then they started giving you like downloadable content, DLC. You're like, okay, maybe an expansion pack, that kind of stuff, but it's creeped in to the point where, like, let's take Raid Shadow Legends, for example. I knew somebody that was spending hundreds of dollars a month just to play that one game, and I'm just thinking, like, man, games used to be like 40, 50, 60 bucks, you buy it and that's it. And now there are people spending like $300, $400, $500 a month on a game where you literally just sit there and you start fights over and over again.
Remember how salty everyone was about that? Well, this might be before your time, but the first expansion for Diablo 1, the Hellfire expansion, made by like a third-party site, and people were like still mad at Blizzard that they thought they were selling them more content.
Oh, Kajishi, what's up? You're back too. D1 expansion was done by Sierra, not even Blizzard.
Yeah, no, that's what I was saying is that it wasn't even Blizzard that released it, but people were salty that they had to pay for more content for the game. They assumed that it was Blizzard, you know?
I see.
And they were like, well, Blizzard's approved it or something. I don't even know if they did. But and maybe that's just what my friend said. You know what I mean? I don't know,
and things were different back then, man. Like, stuff has really come around because of stuff like that. You know, like, everybody wants to make their money, and if somebody else is releasing an expansion pack, then it's like they're not making as much money off it, or any. So you want to control. See, there you go. It goes back to the whole thing of controlling your assets. Companies have made it so that they can control the assets all they want, but prevented us from being able to control our own assets, which is why I like the whole concept of the DeFi movement.
Yeah, the whole Web3 is a total answer to that, and there's been a lot of incidents of that in like various games where people have been banned and lost accounts for thousands of dollars and stuff, and this is an answer to that. Hopefully it's an answer to more things down the road, but at the time, like, this is answering that.
Yeah.
And it's showing that if these things get popular enough, then Blizzard and Wizards, they're going to have to acknowledge it. They're going to have to acknowledge that people do like asset ownership. People do like getting returns on their investments.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's like if one entity creates something, then they're going to have full control over it. But if you have a group-made entity, then you have the power spread out through all the people. So hopefully, like what a democracy should be or whatever, it might run like that. But I guess the downside to that is if you don't have a centralized authority and there's just somebody that has a really good vision, but they can't impose the part of their vision that makes things better, then I think a lot of projects will just kind of become mediocre as well. You know, because I think that's what happened with a lot of MMOs. For example, we were talking about Blizzard, like World of Warcraft. Kajichi, you know, you played World of Warcraft forever. You probably loved the original Warcraft a lot more than what it became later. And it became like a watered down version, just like every other MMO. All these people played, they gave their input, and the company said, you know, we could make more money if we do XYZ, which is exactly what they did. Hey, what's going on? Splinterlands Shakula. Why do you use Splinterlands tag? Because we're talking about Splinterlands right now. I'm mostly a finance streamer, but I have SalomFishbee on here who plays Splinterlands and knows a lot about it. We're having a discussion about Splinterlands.
We were just talking about the bot proposal.
So let's get back to that. Since you're interested in it, we're talking about the bot proposal and the AMA that's happening tomorrow.
Actually, to be 100% honest, I ran Splinter Rents. I ran that rental bot until they shut down with the 1DEC, which is a tenth of a cent, but it shut down the bot.
SPS can break its off? I'm not sure what that means.
I'm not either.
Okay. Oh, all-time high. SPS can SPS break its all-time high? It could, but is it going to happen right now? I seriously doubt it.
I mean, 83 cents is like our all-time high. We're pretty far away from that.
We actually were talking about SPS earlier. There are a lot of factors why it's being held down right now. But if we get another bull market pump with everything else, then I can foresee that flying with everything because of the fact that it's sustaining through this bear market. I mean, that's the number one thing, not to mention all the other projects that they're adding on top of it and all the value that's going to come from that.
Yeah, and like if all these games, all these projects do hit in the next month or two, I can't imagine that wouldn't add value to the main token of the ecosystem.
Right, because we were saying that things are going to cross over. People are going to see certain aspects of these games and be drawn to the other portions that they wouldn't normally see. So I think that helps.
And there's some movement to get SPS on Binance or Coinbase, one of those.
See, that would help a lot.
Yeah, I haven't followed that closely, but that was a proposal that went through a few weeks ago, I believe. They allowed so much SPS from the DAO to seek a listing, because that's these sites want you to pay them to list your coin on them. And the creators weren't exactly for that, but it came through as a community proposal.
Well, yeah, they want to transfer the risk onto the person listing the coin, not the exchange. So I get why they do that, but it's worth it. Yeah, you're going to have a pump and dump real quick right when the coin is listed, because that's what happens on these exchanges, but it's still going to give you exposure, because if you're on Binance, you're going to look much more legitimate than if you're not.
And there's a lot of coins that did that got like Shiba Inu. It just like hit all the exchanges, and that's how it got that crazy run that it had. So I'm all for that. And I'm a little salty that SPS is where it's at, but I'm still buying like as much as I can. I don't have a lot of money to put in stuff right now, but I'm still like staking my SPS and putting in liquidity pools and transferring other assets into it as I can. I transferred that into SPS the other day.
So yeah, I mean, just sticking through these times, it's the way to go. I mean, if you believe in a project, that's the way to go. I mean, if you don't, then you shouldn't be in the project in the first place. And the other thing is always invest responsibly, obviously. You don't ever want to put money you can't lose into it and that sort of thing. Because like I'm thinking, I don't have very much in Splinterlands right now. I'd like to buy just a plot of land in the lands expansion just for that, and just hold some cards that might be valuable later and use it more as an investment vehicle than a game. And I'm only going to use a small portion of my money because I have investments in other areas that I pay attention to and believe in more. I don't want to say like just go and buy whatever, because that's not the best strategy, but like looking at Splinterland's track record right now, I still like the fact that it's chugging along and it's continuing to do what it does.
Yeah, not financial advice. I think that's a big problem. They just did a promo card that's like $80 retail, like $56 after you get your discounts from vouchers. I mean, it's sold okay, but it's not selling really well. And I think a big part of the problem is that's what a land plot is selling for right about now. And I think a lot of people were like, well, I could buy one card that might have some impact, or I can buy this land plot that I can stake the stuff I'm not using on, and it's going to pay me out for the rest of my life, like as long as I hold it. So why don't I get that? You know what I mean? That card's always going to be on the market, even if it goes up in value. Like, land's probably going to sell out. There's only 150,000 plots. Like, there's a lot of plots to be get right now because they called it 1.0, but we're still basically in beta. And there's not a lot to be done. There's not a lot of gameplay. Like I was saying earlier, if we get an influx of people who like to play empire building games that are already used to dumping $20, $50, $100 a month into something like that, I mean, that could just be monumental for the economy. If we get like one big whale, we get like one guy that pumps 10 grand or whatever a month into this kind of thing because he's like, you know what? I want to own my assets. I'm tired of being the king of this freemium game that I just pay the game. I get nothing back from. I want to be the king of an actual area and actually collect taxes from my subjects like every day.
Right. That keep aspect that you were talking about, collecting a piece of those taxes, is an amazing investment for something. As long as the game stays around, any other virtual land that you've seen when crypto went up, Decentraland and these other ones, they had plots that were going for ridiculous amounts of money at that time. Yes. And while they've come down, that same thing's probably going to happen as we go on.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but there was very little there.
Yeah, and they were all buying into the future with that. They're all looking at like, oh, one day we're going to do something. And yeah, probably. That's the thing. It's like as we move online, as something like the metaverse and all its competitors become more standard, digital land is going to be a thing. People aren't just going to want to go to meetings in the metaverse. They're going to want to actually go do stuff. Like, you could go to a concert virtually instead of having to drive halfway across the country to go see some band that you may not even really care that much about, because your friend wanted to go. There's going to be reasons for this stuff to expand in the future as long as it continues. I mean, that's the caveat. But like, even though you can make more land, there's still going to be prime places. Like the dude that bought the plot next to Snoop Snoop Dogg in, I don't know if it's Decentraland or something. Like Snoop Dogg bought a plot. Some dude paid like hundreds of thousands of dollars to be next to him. So there's still going to be stuff like that happens.
Yeah, that's a good point, because when I was looking at my lands, it's SalomFishbee, right? So I'm on a lake or a river, and that's where Fishbee would live. Right. But then it's like, oh, there's a desert in Bulldogs region, like one of the top streamers. It's like I could buy a plot like right next to Bulldogs Keep, and then maybe that'll pay some dividends. Maybe I'll get someone in on my stream. There's all these different fets, and that's what I really like about the game, is that having like the DeFi and the real money aspect makes the strategy so much more real and so much more potent. Like, you reach a spot in a bunch of these games that you play now where you just get ridiculously overpowered, and it just doesn't mean anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you get ridiculously overpowered in this game, you're making like $5 a win. That means something to anybody.
Yeah.
Even a billionaire isn't going to balk at like, oh, I can make $5 every 15 seconds on my phone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's the thing. Like the whole focus now for people that are in the hustle grind set kind of thing is like, how many streams of income can you have? Even if it's not a crazy one, just having something else in there that's beneficial. And I agree with that. So something like this, if a game you're going to play anyway, like you said, that's a great way to go.
Yeah, not financial advice, but I don't think that like buying a plot of land for $48 and then, making sure you have the resources to stock your creatures on it when it goes live, I don't think that's a bad investment. I don't think that that's going to dramatically decrease in value unless, like you said, the game just completely fails.
Well, that's the thing. It's the risk reward. I mean, if you're paying, like you said, it's $48 for a common plot of land, that's not a huge risk. I mean, for some people that may be, but for the average person, that's the kind of money that, if you bought one plot of land and it didn't work out, well, that's okay. Then you move on to something else, But then there are those people that are going to spend ridiculous amounts of money on money that they don't have. That's the risky thing. But think about this with like Bitcoin. If you just bought $20 worth of Bitcoin back in 2010 or 2009 or whatever, you'd be a millionaire right now. And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with this. I'm not trying to hype that or anything. I'm just saying like small investments in newly budding technology isn't a bad way to go because of the risk to reward ratio. If you go into it with the mindset that like, all right, I'm probably going to lose all of this money, so how much am I comfortable putting in if I know I'm going to lose it? If you go in with that mindset, things are going to work out a lot better, because if they work out well, let's say you bought $20 worth of Bitcoin in 2010 and you just forgot about it until 2017 at least, or something like that. That could be one of the greatest things that ever happened in your life, and if it didn't, let's say Bitcoin had crashed, you bought $20 worth of Bitcoin, you forgot about it, that's $20. You're going to go to Carl's Jr. or something and spend that much or more and then forget about that meal anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, okay, so that's the thing, like with a plot of land right now, it pays you out 1 2/3 SPS every day just for holding it without anything going live. So $48 will get you 3 cents a day in dividends. If you buy weekly, which is a dividend stock that pays out weekly, it's $47. It's down, I think it started at 50 or something, and it pays you out like 1 cent a week or 5 cents a week. I forget exactly what it was. So like, if you just compare the rates to the current high yielding dividend stocks, even if it just maintains value, it seems like a good deal. It seems like the going rate.
Splinterlands, I'm sure that there's aspects of it that you don't know as much about, but like for the most part, you can look at the community and you can talk to real people about what's going on. Whereas like some dividend stock, you get to call up the company and expect to get like information that you want from something. No, they have a vested interest in making sure that people keep buying their stock, and they're only going to say what they have to say and all that. So there's at least an element of realism behind games like this. And just to be clear, we're not spokespeople for Splinterlands or anything like that. No. I have actually I'm into finance. I'm mostly into stocks and options and the cryptocurrency market, but this to me is nice because I love games and I've always been interested in them and I play them, and I've wasted a bunch of money on games that really aren't that good, so finally getting to a point in my life where games are starting to pay me to play them is intriguing. And there may be something that's better than Splinterlands that comes around tomorrow. I don't know. But for right now, this kind of thing to me is really interesting, and I like the fact that it's been around for a minute and it's continuing to chug along, and they're talking about it in ways that excites me, because I really I would love to have input into the games that I actually like to play.
There is a game in the Web3 ecosystem right now that caters to the game you like to play. You know what I mean? If it's not going to be one of these projects coming up for Splinterlands, one of the other ones like Gala or Immutable X or the other ones, they are developing some play-to-earn game for everyone at this point. I don't think we're at the point where those games are as good as their Web2 corporate counterparts. Like the MMOs that you can play aren't as good as like Dark Souls or whatever.
You're competing against a machine with ridiculous amount of capital and engineers and everything they need. These kind of things came because people wanted to play games. And yes, then the pumps in the markets over the past decade have caused more people to come in for the money. Yes, I do admit that. And I'm happy that that's going on because that brings more attention to the space and that brings more eyeballs and brains to it. Somebody somewhere might have an idea that revolutionizes everything. It's looking like the trajectory is up for the space in general, whereas you look at what games are doing and what they're becoming, I don't really see them being able to peak above what they have right now because of the fact that they're charging so much more. I like every time I look at a game, I just think like, man, you got to pay so much to do anything. I really miss games that were based on skill. You know, like you could just go in, you could learn a game, you could become really good at playing it and then move up in the ranks. But now it's like, you don't have to be that good. You could just put in a few bucks and then you move up, or you could put in a bunch of money and move up even farther.
Or you can just put in a bunch of time and you'll eventually move up. I mean, there are a lot of games like that where it's like the people playing them aren't even really like making important decisions. You know, like a lot of those empire building games, it's like you can't really fuck up. You know, you just build stuff and then maybe at some point you're like, oh, I didn't build this quick enough, and then maybe you're tempted to spend gems or whatever, but you can still just put the time in.
Right, exactly. I mean, some of those games, yeah, you can build up, but some of them they're paywalling you, and the way I see it, these companies are going to have to compete with the play to earn games more and more as time goes on, because right now they're relatively underground still. I mean, they're not really underground, but if you talk to the average person, they don't know any of these, like, hey, you know, you could play a game and get paid for it, like, oh, it's a scam or whatever. Like, no, most games on crypto blockchains that are reputable are doing stuff like that because it's a way to bring people in, because when people find that there's actual real world value, it makes them want to play. What do you know? I mean, how many games did you download that you played for a couple of months and then you never touched again afterwards because you hate it now? Like, you're getting little dopamine hits or whatever when you were getting their in-game currency and you were buying more like hay bales in some farm game or whatever, but like that doesn't translate to anything, so you didn't actually make any real progress in that game. Whereas like, even if you play a game and you get bored of it, if you're earning money from it, you have actually made some real world improvement to your life because of that game.
Yeah, like that's the thing. And it's like, even if just the passive income to me is so appealing, you don't even have to play the game to get like income, you know, like with the whole land thing that coming out, right. Even with the rental system in the current game. And the challenge too, the game is very challenging, and that's part of the problem. That's what the bots exacerbated. They made the challenge, in my opinion, too much, because like I was even getting frustrated, you know, and I've been playing this game for a while and I kept going up against guys like maybe a level or two under me, but they just had a technically perfect matchup, you know. And so then I'm trying to like match them with technically perfect matchups, and I'm getting unlucky, and I'm getting like mad because I know they're all robots because all their names are like, you know, Seymour 994 or whatever, and that's not, there's not enough accounts in this game. You can call yourself whatever you want, so there's no point to be Seymour 994 unless you're just putting in a bunch randomly, you know. Right. You could just be Seymour, you know, unless you're making 100 Seymour accounts.
Yeah, see, that makes sense. The bots, they're definitely a problem.
But yeah, so it's coming. It's not there yet, but it was, you know, some of the community wanted, and the team made it happen. That doesn't happen a lot in the gaming space, or any spaces, really.
Yeah, well, because I could see the people that own the game's resistance to wanting to completely boot all the bots, because that is going to drop their numbers quite a bit. I mean, it's like any other game. The bots are going to add to everything. They're going to inflate everything and just make it look like it's better. So I understand that. And at the same time, it also adds liquidity to the system in the sense that there are more matches. You know, like if you get rid of all the bots all of a sudden, then the matches are going to be slower because there are going to be as many people to link up. So I get, it's also kind of like an ease of use, a liquidity type thing.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's not going to get rid rid of all the bots. It's going to subjugate them to their own league. The people that are running the bots that are making anything off of it, there's no reason for them to stop. Yeah, they're going to be making less, but they still are making money off their $10, $15, $20 investment per account. A lot of people are talking about it like be gone bots. No, it's just going to delegate them to their own pasture. You know, it's like you bots can have all this grass and the people will have all this grass, and the people were, their grass is going to be better because they're people.
Yeah, as it should be, right? For now, until the AI comes back and reads this conversation and realizes what you just said.
Right?
So.
And like 15 years. This
15 years. 10 minutes, dude. It'll be done in 10 minutes. That's how fast things are progressing.
The conversation that gets us executed by the robot overlords.
You do need to ban them because it does screw with the metrics. Yeah, I mean, it makes any game they're in less fun. Even if it's a monetary thing, it's just not as fun to have bots that can beat you because they have the repository of the game knowledge just like boom right there.
A lot of the games use like low-level bots for beginner players, and a lot of games, especially like mobile games, have like bots sprinkled throughout their ladder, and I've seen that work and I've seen that not work.
Gold diggers. Yeah.
That's exactly what they are.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they did the Soulbound thing. Like back in the day, you would just see people running the free cards and nothing else, like all day long, and they'd be running their like capture rate down to 0. That's a whole thing, another thing they had to change. Like a guy that I was listening to tells, maybe it was Hawks, I'm not sure, but he made a really good point that it was like, people talk about the energy to ban bots. There was so much more energy spent trying to like play around bots. They put up all these measures like the Soulbound cards and all this different change of currencies, and the SPS comes in staked. If we had done this 2 years ago, maybe we wouldn't have had to do any of that, and people could still come in and play the game and earn for free. You know what I mean? Like, because that's what got like a lot of people in it. They came into the game and they play a little and they're like, oh, how much does this crypto work? And they're like, oh, it's worth a quarter. I just made a quarter, and then they're like, oh, I'll put some more money in this. I'll make some more quarters. Now there's like so many paylocks up front, and they're all there because they were trying to limit the amount that the bots could drain from the system.
See, that's interesting. I hadn't really considered that. But yeah, it's like, how much effort is it going to take to ban these things? Not just in this domain, but in any domain, I guess, versus trying to play around them. Because like you said, all this effort went into trying to subvert this whole thing so people could just play next to them and everybody could be happy. But like, not everyone's going to be happy in life, right? That's just how it goes. Right. Sometimes some people are just going to have to be out. So, all right. So we're coming up on 2 hours here. So I want to start winding this down a little bit. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about before we wrap things up?
One topic I kind of wanted to talk about is, as far as the game goes, they just released Chaos Legion. The most recent set just sold out. And the Chaos Legion set has a lot of parallels for me to the Magic the Gathering set, Fallen Empire, that came out when I was like 16, 17 years old. Both of these sets were mass produced at a time when the game was growing and they kind of overshot how many people they were going to get. Magic ended up printing out way more cards today than they ever did a Fallen Empire. But Fallen Empire was a set that like sat around in stores for 10, 20 years almost. It was one of the biggest flops in Magic the Gathering history, if not the biggest as far as the set goes.
And that was mostly because of overprinting, or?
Overprinting, but here's the difference. And one could argue that Chaos Legion is overprinted. I don't think anyone would argue that it was overprinted. They could argue that it's nowhere as much as overprinted as Fallen Empire, relative to the game base and everything. And I would agree with that. But we're just saying, both the two overprinted sets, when the game is in its, adolescence, tweens, it's not an infant anymore, but it's not what it would become. But the reason why Fallen Empire was such a disaster is because the cards, they were a downshift. There was no power creep. Chaos Legion for Splinterlands is one of, if not the most powerful sets in the game. So even though the set is overprinted and they've had to burn some packs and they've had to give away some packs, the cards are maintaining the value that they are, which I believe is fairly good because they're the meta cards. And I think that's a really good sign with how this company is going as far as the card game aspect goes. That's kind of what I'm saying is their ability to keep the meta good and competitive and not just stagnant. And there's been some cards that are problematic that are still in modern, but they have a system that those will phase out. But the way they have it is like they release everything, they play test it, and then they nerf or buff it before it's officially live. And very few things have had to be nerfed or buffed after that. There's only been like one or two, which is way better than like when you consider how like Magics or Blizzards do this stuff with like Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering. Like they're always having these controversial bannings, these controversial card changes and rule changes, and it's just a big shit show every time. But this game so far, like, you know, there's people that are salty and there's things that people didn't like, and there's a couple abilities that got nerfed and put on the back burner and are kind of like crap rares if you pull them now. But the meta is good. You know, the meta is not stagnant. They print answers to problems. They keep the card level reined in enough to keep the old stuff competitive, but moving up enough so that there's cheap options for new players getting into the game. Like if you look at a pack of Splinterlands cards right now of Chaos Legion, they were retailing for $5, but that came with like perks like airdrops and other stuff. But you can buy them in the store now for like $2. And the worst case scenario pool out of a $2 pack is probably around 50 cents. That means you just get the 4 worst commons and the worst rare you can. It's probably even less than 50 cents, probably like 30-40 cents, which, you know, is not great. But when you look at that compared to other NFT projects or trading card games or even like baseball cards, you could go buy a pack of baseball cards, and if you don't pull some great insert or some auto, it's worth F all. Like, you can't give those cards away. And that to me is like really good that this set, like, maybe it's a little overprinted, but it's relevant in the meta and it's still holding like a quarter value for worst case scenario in a pack. Like best case scenario in a pack, you could pull like, you know, $500 worth of cards. You pull the right gold legendaries and stuff, you know,
which is huge if you're spending $5 or even $2 on a pack.
You spend $2 a pack and pull like a gold legendary or $250. You're probably just gonna cash that out and
not even
like,
play it.
Yeah, maybe you put $50 back into the game, and then you'll probably come back later and spend $200 on packs and not pull crap. If you're like me.
Well, that's what, you know, like the casino. The people come in, they win, and they keep pulling the slots or whatever. That's just that whole mindset. It gets you. So it's not always the best to be winning something like that. So are you saying that Blizzard and Wizards of the Coast and all that, maybe the reason that they have to be nerfing these things after release is because they're releasing them hastily and they're just trying to pump stuff out, they're not thinking them through as much, or what do you mean?
Yeah, my opinion is that the people that are playtesting them don't have the appropriate influence on decisions that are made. I know for a fact that's the case at Wizards of the Coast. Well, I shouldn't say for a fact. I've talked to people that work at Wizards of the Coast that have told me that. I guess they could have lied to me. But I've talked to people that basically say that's the problem with Wizards of the Coast, is that they playtest the cards, but the playtesters give their results like after the things have already been sent to print. And there's been some crazy mistakes over the past few years that kind of lead me to believe that. Like they had one card that it was like the way it was printed, it was just like an infinite win combo every time you played it. It was an instant win, but it was like you could search your deck for any card, you know, which is, it's pretty close to about as instant win as you could get.
Well, once something gets that big and they've got a board of directors that are saying like, we need to make more this quarter because every quarter they need to make more, then it's like, all right, do we print this thing and we make X amount of money, or do we spend extra time making it just so perfect? Because that's like how much time you spend fixing it might take away from the profit. So it's like, what loses you more money? We have to go with the opposite one. And that's probably what it is. Like, send the thing to the printer, put the dudes on to test it, and if they find out there's a problem, we'll just fix it later, and then everybody will be fine.
Don't get me going on Wizards. We could do a whole stream on the downfall of Wizards of the Coast and Magic the Gathering. Like, it's just, I used to love it and now I hate it.
Well, there's a lot of people that have issues, especially with the thing that they just did with Dungeons and Dragons, and like they had to kind of backstep a little bit, even though they said they didn't. Like, you know, that's just what happens when companies get that big, man. They do stuff like that.
They hired the literal Pinkertons from Red Dead Redemption. They're still around to retrieve some merchandise a guy was sent by mistake and spoiled on a live stream. They hired the literal bad guys, the Pinkerton firms from Red Dead 2, to go to this guy's house. And he was like way more reasonable about it than I would have been. Like, if they had done that to me, like, oh, that would have been my persona for the next like 3 years. Like the guy who was raided by the Pinkertons, you know, for cardboard.
Yeah, for cardboard. There you go, right? It's all all cardboard.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So that's one of the benefits of something like Splinterlands is you don't have to deal with that huge corporatocracy that is kind of controlling things now. All right,
well, you have to deal with it, but you can go in and talk to it directly. I mean, it's still there. They still have a CEO who probably has more assets in the game than he should, to be quite honest, or two of them. But at least they're accountable. At least every week you see their face and you can ask them a question directly. At this point, there's not enough people in the town halls. As long as you don't call them a cocksucker or something, they'll answer your question.
Right. Well, and see, that's the thing with any kind of a project like that. Like, I'm okay with the owners of the project or the people that started it and put like all their time and energy and resources into it having more than the community itself. That's totally fine. But the question is, how much? Like some CEO or whatever that's taking a ridiculous amount of money and not really adding a ton of value because the company was already going when they came in and they really didn't make too many other adjustments to it. Should that person really be getting the billions of dollars that they're getting? But if somebody's making a little bit more, or they have like a good chunk of the assets, but people in the game are happy and the community is thriving. It's like, how greedy do you want to be? I'm okay with a little bit of greed, but once you start pushing that over the edge, that's too much. Everybody has their limit of how much they'll tolerate. Anyway, we're getting into a whole other thing on that.
That actually related back to the bot thing. I didn't bring that up. The two creators abstained from voting in the bot proposal. They said, we're not going to vote because we control too much power and we're kind of against it, but we want the community to have their say. And then the head of the DAO voted like his 10 million SPS against it, and there was a huge community uproar, people saying some stuff to him that was probably inappropriate, but people actually calling out his character because he's the guy that got the 30 million SPS to get us on Binance or Coinbase or whatever it was. So people were like calling out his integrity and stuff, and then he flipped his vote. So
interesting.
But hella people were saying like, if Aggie and Matt, the two founders, don't vote, you shouldn't vote either. If the top two guys aren't voting and you're number 3, then you shouldn't vote either. And I actually agree with that. I'm not sure if Aggie and Matt shouldn't be able to vote, but if they don't vote, the number 3 and 4 guys, if they're working for the company, they probably shouldn't vote either.
It's like, when is it a conflict of interest or whatever? So understandable.
Right. But it's like when the two founders are like, we think it's a conflict of interest, then I think anyone that is as connected to it as them should view it the same way.
Yeah, but what's the line then? Where do you draw the line?
Yeah, should you mandate that? You know, like, or should they just do it? Like, it's a big thing.
Well, and that's the whole thing we're looking at with the crypto space and the AI space is like the lines are getting very blurry of who's going to own stuff and what's going to be considered somebody's intellectual property or whatever because of the way that the internet and just technology in general is about to work, that it's going to be really difficult to find out where we should be drawing those lines. And I mean, that's what's going on with the AI battle right now. It's not so much that like, is AI going to take over the world and kill everybody? Like, that's always a possibility, but it's more like, who owns the stuff? What constitutes plagiarism? What constitutes an original work? Like, there's just all these things that we kind of didn't even think about that are now in the foreground because that's the reality of what the situation. So that's very interesting, actually. That because do you think Blizzard would ever do something like that? Or I mean, I don't mean to keep singling out Blizzard, but like the people that run Blizzard, do you think they'd be like, this decision that has to do with all a bunch of money, we're just going to abstain ourselves and see what the community think? Like, hell no, they're not going to do that. So at a project like this where they say, hey, it's a conflict of interest, then they're stepping back, that tells me that there's at least some moral compass there.
No one at Blizzard that has that much power gives that much of a fuck about the community, about the longevity of the game past profits.
Right. Well, they're making their money, right? That's once you make a certain amount of money, people just don't care anymore.
CEO at Blizzard's or Hasbro, they want to make record profits for 5 years and then get out. And they don't care what happens after that.
Exactly. That's how the game is played. Okay, so let's try to wrap things up here. What was the last thing you wanted to talk about?
Just my last wrap up here is I got a list of people that I think should check out Splinterlands if they're interested in these areas. And that's gamers in general, but especially TCG players. Anyone curious about Web3, play to earn. Anyone who likes tower defense games, because that's coming soon.
Right, that's a big one.
And the sports things are coming too. So if you didn't hear earlier, they have a soccer game that looks to be a lot like Blitzball from FF10. It's coming out. If you like soccer or you like Blitzball, that's something you should look into. And then empire building game like because of the lands that are coming out. And then like dividend stocks.
Yeah.
If you look at the return rates on this compared to your typical, I mean, these return daily. You can go on there, it just accumulates all day. I've got like 20,000 SBS staked and it pays me out like 10 SBS throughout the day. I can go and collect it, stake it, or spend it like at any time. So if you're a dividend stock guy, I would say check out Splinterlands, check out the lands, and check out the ability to like rent cards and stuff. Even if you don't like the game, I think you'll like the returns.
That's the thing right there, is it hits so many facets that I think stuff like this will gain in popularity over time, just because of the fact that it's so useful. The question is it sustainable? You know, you look at projects like FTX, they were offering you ridiculous returns and they weren't telling you how they were doing it. Well, what do you know? They were putting it into extremely risky investments. That's how they were doing it. Whatever they were offering everybody else, they were making more than that because they had to. So as long as something can continue to pay the way it's paying and it isn't doing something shady, then it's worth looking into, you know, because like not all dividend stocks are perfect. I mean, a lot of them are shady too. You know, it's like people complain about the crypto space and being like, oh, it's got scammers and all that. Well, yeah, but so does the traditional financial space. It's not like crypto is the only space where people are scamming. It's like anywhere there's money, there's going to be scams. That's just how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I would say that O is a safer dividend stock than buying a plot of Splinterlands land right now, but there's way more potential upside to that plot of Splinterlands land. O isn't going up to like $500 in a year. I'm not saying the land is either, but it could.
Right. Well, you know, there's also the foot down on REITs right now because of rates going up. So especially at a point like this, like Splinterlands doesn't have that same. I mean, it is because of the market, but it's not direct. Like people aren't borrowing money to play Splinterlands, so it's not going to be pushed down as much because of that. I've kind of minimized my dividend stocks to the ones that I really like and the ones that I really want to keep long term, and I haven't really been looking at other ones until the environment changes. Right now, it's all about just sucking out premium with options on people that are gambling on the market. That's the whole strategy. You know, collect my dividends, increase the position in the ones I like, but then try to suck out premium in the options market and use that to make all the moves I need to make. That's kind of what I've been doing. All right. Do you have any last thoughts or anything before we wrap this up?
I don't know. I think I got everything out. I'm sure I forgot something along the way. But
of course.
I'm sure I repeated myself several times, but thanks for anyone who came in and checked us out. Thanks for listening. Come by.
Yeah, thanks for joining me today, SalomFishbee. It's always fun.
Thanks for having me. Have a good one.
Oh, thanks. You too, man. All right. So that was SalomFishbee. I'm wrapping this up now. I'll talk to you later. Have a good week. It's getting crazy in the market, so stay safe.